Holy shike, let's talk about pigs. Here's your host of the Pork Podcast, Jennifer Shike.
There's just something about the story behind the story. And as a storyteller, I'm always searching for ways to give readers just a little bit more. And that's what the Pork Podcast is all about, bringing you stories of the people and the progress of the pork industry. I'm Jennifer Shike. Let's go find just a little bit more. Well, I am so excited to welcome Kylee Deniz to the Pork Podcast for a special bonus episode because it's Black Friday and we're just going to have a little bit of fun today. Thank you for joining us, Kylee.
Yeah, Jennifer, thanks for the opportunity.
So in case you don't know Kylee is the executive director of the Oklahoma Pork Council, which is headquartered in Oklahoma City, and she leads the association in a wide range of initiatives, including strategic planning, issues management, advocacy, stakeholder engagement, and the leadership of a highly qualified staff. I think if you ask people, they would tell you that she's tons of fun. She's a hard worker. She's always thinking outside of the box. And those are just a few of the many reasons why I wanted to invite you on the podcast today, Kylee. But first, before we get started, I have to say congratulations on your most recent honor, 2024 Oklahoma Agriculture Woman of the Year. So proud of you. Tell us, what was that like to win that award? I know that's a huge honor in your state.
Sure. Well, I had no idea it was even being considered. It's not an award you apply for, but an award you get tapped for. And so to be tapped by other women and just agriculturists in the state of Oklahoma was really special for me. It has been, for me, my job is to just put my head down and work. I have a lot of ag in my background, 5 generations, and that's what you do. And so the award is absolutely special, but I was just doing what I signed up to do, working hard for the pork industry.
Well deserved, and it's exciting for the pork industry to see one of our own win such a big prestigious award. So congratulations again. I would like to go back just a little bit and fill the listeners in on your background because you and I share a similar path where we both have a love for a little ag college on a hill near Kewanee, Illinois. So tell us how you found your way to Blackhawk East and a little bit about your experience there.
Sure. Well, I didn't know Blackhawk East existed. I grew up outside of Denver, Colorado, and my family, as I mentioned, farmed for many generations and, kind of dabbled in the 4-H and the FFA, and I started showing pigs. And for whatever reason or however that came about, that really changed the trajectory of my life and really my career. I didn't know what the pork checkoff was or the National Pork Producers Council was as a 17, 18-year-old graduating from high school in Colorado. But because of showing a pig, I really credit my pork industry career today. And I had the opportunity to travel to the American Royal, and Dan Hogue was judging the show. And those of you that know Dan Hogue, it was just one of those, Dan Hogue moments. And I thought whatever I had planned, which was to either go to Colorado State and judge for my mentor, Dr. Brett Kaysen, who works at the National Pork Board today, or to go to Oklahoma State because I was really after an ag communications degree. But I met Dan Hogue, and then I met Brian Arnold, who works at United today, and it's history from there. I enjoyed 2 years of judging at Blackhawk. We were a pretty competitive team. I started out as a big class, about 30, and of course, dwindled down to 8 or so that marked cards. And I was the only female on that team. So I learned a lot through livestock judging at Blackhawk East, but came away with a whole different network and this whole exposure to what the pork industry is like, because we know the presence of pigs, right, is in the Midwest, not so much in Colorado. So met a lot of people, and it's history from there, but really thankful for my time at Blackhawk East and in my pork industry career today because of so many of those decisions as a young person.
Well, it's funny. I know your story and we've talked about it before, but just listening to you share it, I can't believe how many similar things that are there. I wouldn't be in the pork industry today if it wasn't for Dan Hogue and my experience at Blackhawk East, because that most definitely helped me realize opportunities at National Swine Registry, at National Pork Board too. I admit I grew up in Iowa and I did show pigs a little bit too, but the presence that National Pork Board has now which I like to think is a little bit because of their connection with the National Swine Registry and NJSA. But it's really cool to think about how different it is for my daughter, who's now a freshman at Blackhawk, compared to when we went into Blackhawk. Just they are going into it knowing so much more than we knew at the time. But regardless, thank goodness for Blackhawk.
Yeah.
A great experience for both of us. And I mean, judging, I realize, has been life changing for us as well. It's been a very impactful experience, not only in my life, but in my husband's life too. And we just got back from the North American Judging Contest in Louisville last week. My husband was helping with the junior college contest there. So I was able to go through some of the classes and visit with some of the coaches. And I wasn't competing, but every time they say, turn your backs to the class, I just like, it's like this feeling that goes through you. I don't know how to describe. And so as I sat there, I thought, gosh, like I miss that adrenaline high. I miss that moment. It's kind of, okay, we got to go. What do you miss the most about livestock judging?
Sure. To your point of that experience sets in real quickly. I was at the Tulsa State Fair earlier this fall, and the judging contest was going on. And I just had this reflection, or this moment of like, I was, down on this floor not that long ago, marking a card, questioning, did I mark the card right? Did I mark the card, period? And so I think that, in my case, I livestock judge through 4-H, FFA, then junior college and senior college. And it comes back pretty quickly. And to your point, I think it's an adrenaline thing, and I'm an adrenaline junkie, I think it'd be fair to say. But, the people that you meet through livestock judging is something. The fact that you can articulate your thoughts, like on the fly, has really proved to be beneficial to me. And as I look at the pork industry today, it's very clear that folks, right, that have some kind of judging in their pedigree, just because you do learn some of those skills very quickly and you go all in for several years. In our case, it happened to be at Blackhawk, where we went on to judge at senior college. So very special opportunity. Still have some, times where I wake up from a nightmare saying, like, did I mark that card, or did I talk that class right? Or there was a class of market lambs at Louisville, to your point, judging, I guess, both my junior college and senior college year, that I feel like, did I get that right? Because my team is counting on me, So really special. Love livestock judging and can't encourage it enough for the next generation.
Well, and you bring up a good point, that pressure that you're under in the moment, okay, you want to talk about pressure? Here's a warning. When your kids judge,
Oh yeah,
it's one thing when you're marking the cards and the pressure's on you, and it's really hard. Like when I have no control, I can't help. There's nothing I can do, but you kind of feel that pressure magnify again. And I was just, I was thinking about how much I appreciate how judging has helped me deal with high pressure situations. And it just over and over again, I can just, almost daily, there's something that I'm like, man, I'm so glad that I had that experience. And so, and also the people, you mentioned Brian Arnold too in your story, which I think is fun. What I love is I remember Dan saying, I need you to come back because I want you to get introduced to this kid named Brian Arnold. And I would like you to have lunch with him and meet his family. And so we came, I came back and spent some time during his tour there. And Blackhawk does such a good job of connecting teams to teams to teams. It's not just your team that you interact with. It's literally like every team that's been at Blackhawk. They find some way to connect those dots, and it's really cool.
Yeah, great.
So
there's some culture to it. I speak with students consistently, and when I share my pedigree or my story and say Blackhawk, instantly there'll be kids in the room. They're like, we are one, right? Like we are a part of one community. And I love what Hogue built and the tradition that's being carried on to Blackhawk today.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, obviously, you had some interest with pigs and so forth, but did you really think that you would be where you are today? How did you get from there to your current place in the pork industry?
Sure. Well, after Blackhawk, I went on to Oklahoma State, and I was really passionate about getting an ag communications degree. And at the time, there were a handful of universities that were doing that degree well. So I knew that it meant leaving, our centennial farm outside of Denver and leaving my family in pursuit of this ag communications degree. So I did that, but the safe spot for me probably was livestock judging or this livestock community. And specifically, I fell in love with pigs. My folks farmed, as I mentioned. And so Pigs were something that my mom, my brother, my sister, and I could go do in the summers, just because my dad was back home at the farm. But because I was on kind of this mission and had this pig as, or pigs people as a vehicle, went on to Oklahoma State and then ended up getting my master's degree as well as my undergrad while in Stillwater. And I never wanted to leave. I really loved Oklahoma. But unfortunately, like all good things, right? Or as Hogue would say, you're never done your oldest changes. And my role was changing to move out of Stillwater. And I ended up moving to Iowa. And it was because of a great family, the Core family, that they live outside of Pleasantville, and just connections, livestock connections, that I interned at Vermeer Corporation. And Mark Core still today is one of my greatest mentors, and his wife, Deb Core, one of my greatest mentors in two very different capacities. But moved to Iowa through some connections in the livestock industry. And after graduate school, I actually went to work at an advertising agency, Lessing Flynn. And Lessing Flynn today is a pretty big agency. At the time, it was smaller, 20 of us that were just trying to make hay, right? Literally, I was on the Vermeer account, and with their hay balers, we were trying to make hay with their balers in terms of promotion. And anyway, after about a year or so at Vermeer, or working on the Vermeer account and some other ag accounts, I went to our leader, my boss, Jess Held, who is an incredible leader, and said, "Hey, Jess, like I really want to get some animal agriculture in our portfolio at Lessing Flynn." And she said, "Okay, I don't know what that means, but let's do it." So she had this belief in me that I don't know that I had in myself. And anyway, we sought after the National Pork Board in terms of new business. And kind of one of those histories from here, we took the Pork Board on as our client and launched the hashtag Real Pig Farming campaign, which was really a platform to get farmers talking about what they do on social media. Right. It seems like forever ago, but it wasn't that long ago that we're like, here's Facebook, here's right, Twitter or X today, here's Instagram, here's Snapchat. So we launched that platform, and after a year and a half or so of working as an agency rep exec for the National Pork Board, I went to work at the National Pork Board. And from there, it was about a 5-year stint, 5.5-year stint at the National Pork Board before I got tapped to come to Oklahoma. But while at the National Pork Board, I did a little of everything. I started working on the marketing side for farmers, talking the PQA plus, but also getting to work with youth. And to the point, Jennifer, you made earlier of the NJSA and the Team Purebred, part of my responsibilities early on at the National Pork Board was to actually lead those partnerships. So went there, then moved into working with the state pork associations. There are 42 of them, Oklahoma Pork Council being one of them. And then ended my career at the National Pork Board working on the consumer marketing side. And at the time, that was a pre-pandemic era. It was all things Google, right? Whether it be display or search or YouTube influencers, that was my role before getting tapped again to come to Oklahoma. And I just believe, right, this whole world is so connected and the network is small. And I love that, and have a pedigree or a story to, show or share as to how, good people connecting with good people can really be a wonderful thing. So I find myself today at the Oklahoma Pork Council. I've been here since March 2021. And as you shared in the intro, we've got an incredible staff team, an incredible board team, for strategic intentions that range from protecting our farmers' freedom to operate to youth, right, and building our future workforce. So kind of a fun story, maybe not that unusual for the livestock industry or the pork industry, but I'm very proud of, what my life has been like so far.
Well, I always loved working with Oklahoma Pork Council because way back years ago when I was at NJSA too, they were just always so passionate about young people and recognized that that was really key to the future. So I've always admired that about their organization, or just a really good group of people there. But it's been fun to see you come in and do some great things as well. So there's a history of great leadership there, but you have no doubt continued to take it to even greater levels. So let's talk just a little bit about your current role, because I feel like one minute I see you dressed up in your beautiful business jacket, talking to legislators, just being a fabulous voice for the industry. And the next minute, you're in your jeans helping tornado victims by passing out pork sandwiches and other supplies. So I feel like you don't really have a typical day, probably like a lot of us. But talk to me about what are some of the typical things that you might do in your job every day.
Sure. I love the range you just brought up. That feels like, a year in the life of the Oklahoma Port Council. And to your point of, being dressed up, talking to legislators, advocating for our industry, that's very much a part of my role. And, what the Oklahoma Port Council does. We serve the entire pork industry. And to serve an industry, it does mean that you're protecting farmers' freedom to operate. And that could be an individual that has a 4-H or FFA show pig to the largest commercial farms in our state. So that is a day and what our spring looks like just with our state legislative session. But then to your point of the other example, it's Oklahoma and we're known to have some severe weather in the spring. And we've actually had tornadoes here this fall. But we had a series of storms come through April, May time. And just several communities, including our pork production communities that were hit. And we had pig barns that were hit by tornadoes. And when you serve an industry, right, the response is you respond and you go support. So we have great folks that love pork, right, as a food. And when I said, like, we've got to get to Holdenville, we've got 80,000 sows within a 50-mile radius, we've got to get there. We had several of our partners that we work with year in, year out, day in, day out, say, like, let's do this. And we did go on a few-day series of feeding people because there were folks that were displaced. And the last thing we wanted anybody to be thinking about is like, what am I going to have for lunch or dinner? Instead, it's like, how's my family doing? What's my property like? What do I need to do to get back on my feet? So that was a really special time, although it was a hard time, right, for so many. But in between, we were doing things like working with students, and we have an incredible youth program built, trying to connect with those that are in high school, right? A very impressionable time, a time in which they could be seeking a career in the pork industry. And we tried to share our story a bunch. And then we can, at the same time, be working with our farmers or board of directors. We love to be out on the road at the World Pork Expo and everything in the mix. So every day is pretty different, and we love that. And just even thinking about the season we're going into, we will move into a month's worth of giving through our Give a Ham campaign. Starting on Giving Tuesday, we're going to launch it in Stillwater with 1,000 meals. And then we've got 6 different events across the state in which we will just be feeding folks and saying, like, thanks for the opportunity to do business in our state. And thanks for what you do for the communities in which we live and work. So it's a lot of fun. You can't make up the job description. And in fact, we just did annual reviews and we kind of looked at job descriptions around here. We're like, other duties as assigned, there's a lot that falls into that category. So it's very special and a true honor to serve the Oklahoma pork industry.
Well, I love that. So it's fun to see you guys thriving and enjoying what you do. And speaking of that, for each of my guests on the Pork Podcast, one of the things I like to do is find out what some of your colleagues and friends have to say about you. So I visited a little bit with Kaylee McDonald, who was with Zimpro, and she said, and she actually judged at Black Hawk. You guys were a year apart, I think, if I'm right. And she said, what makes Kylee such a success is her ability to connect and adapt to all facets of the industry. Not only is she creative and an out-of-box thinker, but she's so up to date with the younger generation and knows how to engage with them on their platforms or on their level, whether it's the show pig industry or through your internship program. She's also able to connect with the bulk of the swine industry when it comes to real-world production, policy, and it's just likable and relatable. And I couldn't agree more. I thought she really said it so well. But as you look toward the future of the U.S. pork industry, why do you focus so much on the next generation? Because from my perspective, I don't think you just think it's a good idea. I think you think it's critical. Why?
Absolutely. In Oklahoma, our most recent economic impact study, there were 23,000 people that work in pork. And so to me, where we've got farms in Laverne, Oklahoma or Holdenville, right, these are not highly populated areas. So we've got to be thinking about that talent pipeline. And it could be all levels of the farm. It could be slat level, those that want to do day one pig care on a sow farm, to those that want to be in Washington, D.C., Jennifer, like your daughter, right, that should be advocating for the pork industry. And so, we know that that pipeline, and it's a long game as well. If we thought we were going to just jump into recruiting for our industry and jump out, that will never work. So we do believe it's mission critical, and we believe there's a role for everyone. I love to go and speak with student groups and, kind of ask the question, do you think you could work in pork? And, most of the room at the start will say, no way, right? Like, I want to be in accounting. I want to be in HR. I want to, do all of these things that don't include going to a pig farm every day. And I often, being a little bit competitive, will say, if you find a job that we can't find in pork, I'm happy to buy you lunch. And I've not bought a student lunch yet, just because it is a dynamic industry. It's a global industry. And whether you want to work on a farm or work in DC, somewhere in the middle, there's something for everyone. So we're playing the long game. We're really passionate about it. Our team, we consider our workforce at all levels strategic intention as a cup filler, not necessarily, work. It's a lot of fun to be recruiting on the next generation. And we really work to bring together our industry as a whole. Our board member, Dr. Suzanne Genova, is a show pig veterinarian, and she's new to our board of directors and has this vision that we should be one pork, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you have the show pig or if you're in the commercial industry, you belong and you're a part of the Oklahoma Pork Council. So, we've got to kind of knock down a few of those walls or some of that way of thinking, because there truly is an opportunity for every person that wants to have a job, and it just happened to be in the U.S. pork industry.
So good. Now I'm watching myself because I have about 3 other questions that are just popping into my mind that I want to ask you about that. But I decided I was going to try to talk to you about all the things today. And so I need to divert for just a minute because this is dropping on Black Friday. So I think it's only logical that we talk a little bit about shopping. And I will just point out that if you've never seen Kylee at a conference, you're missing out, because she always knows how to get the best outfits put together. And so I've got to know, where's your favorite place to shop?
Well, thanks for that. It's funny. I haven't mentioned that I have 2 young boys, and so we go hard all the time, whether it's at work or at home. And so shopping for me often looks online. But what I love to do is shop local or shop small. And today, being several years out of college, I've got several college friends that have successful businesses. Boutiques. I think of Macy Eagle and Cactus Joys, or Kelly LeClaire and Heritage Style. So I have some go-tos because I've got to shop online, in a aggressive, busy work life and aggressive, busy, fun home life too. But I try to shop small, shop local, and do business with those that are, in my circle. I think most of us try to do things like that. But, if you want a good blazer, if you're a female, I think of Express being a pretty affordable blazer. And Jennifer, you mentioned Kylee in that quote. We had a fun time at a Zen Pro conference around the World Pork Expo. And I learned that you can shop anywhere, right? And it's just about knowing what you look good in, from our friend Crystal Blinn, and go from there. But shop local and shop small, I think, would be the moral of my story, without giving you a whole list of all the places that I buy stuff online. So,
Well, that's excellent advice. And I laugh too because I'm surprised by how many cute boutiques pop up at some of these pig shows and events that we attend. And I laugh because I'll be like, people will say, "Where did you get that? Did you buy that at one of your pig shows again?" And I was like, "Yeah." There's
yeah.
it's so fun to see. It seems like there's a lot of women who are tied to the pork industry in some way, but also have a boutique too. And so there's a lot of great entrepreneurs out there to support, who have ties to the pork industry as well.
Yeah. I got a couple other ideas. I am
Mhm.
in the middle of holiday shopping, right, for my own team and for our family members. And I think I like to gift a bit untraditionally. Like, I love to send Newman's Family Farm box of pork to folks. And, that's quite a surprise when you get a box of pork and it's got from pork chops to bacon to some sausage or a brat.
They have the best bacon. I'm interrupting, but it's so good. I received one of those as well, and that was like one of my favorite gifts. Very good idea. Okay, what else?
Yep. So anything in that sphere of supporting the industry, I like to do. But we'll do fun things like send wreaths, and I know that feels a bit untraditional, but a fresh wreath on someone's door is a really fun idea. And in fact, my husband and I, when we moved back to Oklahoma from Iowa, his employer, the did this every Christmas. And that's been a tradition that I've now started doing, sending fresh wreaths from, not Oklahoma, to different friends, family members, and team members of ours. So love to do things like that as well. And then it's interesting when you get to poking around at different companies and their other business units. Cargill specifically, they have a chocolate company. It's called Wilbur. And one of my mentors, Kevin Sheehan, who works at the National Pork Board, turned me on to Wilbur chocolate. And they have several different options, but specifically a milk bud, or a bud is what they call it. And you can do it in milk chocolate or dark chocolate. And so every year we do Wilbur chocolates for our board of directors. And the first year they're kind of like a box of chocolates. And then, when you try them and then connect the story to the bigger ag story, everyone really has fallen in love with that idea. So hopefully those are a few fun Black Friday ideas for those that might be thinking about Black Friday or the holidays.
I love it. You can never have enough good ideas. And to your point, it's just so fun to think of something a little bit different and outside of the box to give to people, something that they wouldn't go treat themselves to. And I love fresh wreaths. That's such a great idea. And I always look forward to when kids sell those fresh wreaths around us, because they're just, you get to support something and you get a beautiful wreath for your door. So very cool. Okay, back to business because I'm watching my time again. I wanted to share a thought from Blaine Arthur, who's the Secretary of Ag for the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food and Forestry. And she said, Kylee brings a team approach to every project she tackles. She is always inclusive and thinks outside of the box. She brings positive energy to all of those that she interacts with, and she is intentional and sincere in all that she does. What experiences in your life have helped you become a better team player? And why do you think that's such a great approach for how we solve problems in the pork industry today?
Sure. Well, I love that you've reached out to different folks, and Secretary Arthur is right, a mentor of mine, a mentor of my entire team. Like, she's done incredible work in the state of Oklahoma. So very special that you reached out to her. And I think she sets the tone for teamwork. When I joined the Oklahoma Pork Council, who I am, my pedigree is a bit different than the other commodity leaders across the country. In terms of being female and being younger with a young family, maybe that's the biggest thing. These jobs require a lot in terms of away from home or out of office, evening things. And so the younger family piece might be the biggest hook. But Secretary Arthur has demonstrated how you do that well, right? How you can have both. You can have, a wonderful family life. And in our case, like we have cows at home. And you can also have a job which is fulfilling and fun, and you're making a difference, and you're building a team. So for me, I think it does go back to some of the things where we started, the livestock judging, right? I am not super tall. And while I tried my hand at sports, it was just clear that I wasn't athletic and I wasn't physically going to be there. And so to use my mind and use my passions to do a thing like livestock judging and be a part of a team really showed me a long time ago of what it can be like to be a part of a, not just successful. Like, I want to win. I think, like we as a human society, we want to win. But to be a part of a team that's high functioning and that trusts each other. And, what I often say, like, go to war for one another. And as I have taken on this role in Oklahoma, I hope that all of the team building and the relationships, really relational in my mind, that I've done to this point is not because of a job. It's because of who I am. And I genuinely want people to excel and succeed. And I think that is what teamwork is. And, I could say we've got a great ag group in Oklahoma that is team focused. It might be an issue, today for pork, but it's an issue for poultry or beef tomorrow. And we all have that mindset. And Secretary Arthur set the tone for that. Same with our board and our staff team. I don't know if everyone talks about, their board of directors being part of their team, but that's how we think about it here. And we had our board president doing annual reviews here at the office recently. And, it's kind of like, this is two-way. Like, how do we make sure everybody is humming and rocking and having fun because we're doing life together? So I can't imagine not being on a team, right? I can't imagine a life where you're doing things solo. So I suppose I found my way into teams, whether it be livestock judging or to be in my career, or I even think of our team at home, which is my husband and my two boys. And they're not showing yet. They're not judging yet. They're 4 and 17 months. So we've got a little while until we get into some of those competitive environments, which you talked about. But we got a home team, Mike, Drake, and Denton, that is also pretty incredible too. So I love team. I am team everything.
Well, I love that too. And, that's what I want to transition to next was I know how much you love your career, but I know how much you love your most important job of being a mom. And so, I mean, admittedly, it's not easy to manage at times. And I think to pretend like, oh, it's easy to have everything all the time is false and not a good way to, represent what we do to the next generation, right? People say, "Oh, you make it look so easy with balancing your kids and your job." And I'm like, "Well, it takes a lot of work." And so and there's days where I'll be honest, I don't know about you, but I don't feel like I always balance it the way I want to. But to your point, having that team at home is what helps me do that all the time. Having a husband who supports and understands, having kids who recognize, what I do has value too helps. How do you manage being the mom and that professional that you want to be?
Mhm. Sure. Well, I am a work in progress, right? I think we all are work in progresses. But specifically, when I think about success, for me, if I can prioritize my faith, my marriage, my family before my work, and then my giving, which would be my top five, that will help. And to add to your point, like I won't get it right always, and I probably don't get it right the majority of the time. But those are the five things that are important to me in life. And I really am thankful to have a supportive, amazing husband who's very different than I am, right? He loves to be home with the cows in the pasture. And I also love to do that, but I don't mind, heading to a conference or visiting with legislators or whatever that piece might be. And then our boys are all things agriculture, and truly they're all things beef. And so I've got a little bit of work to do in terms of shaping what they might want to do or what they might want to show or the industry they might go into. Because today they are just completely obsessed with the cows that, graze down the lane of our house. Um, but I think we are all connected on those values, right? The things that are important. And I don't have the secret sauce to it. And again, I'm a work in progress, but I try to keep my faith, my marriage, my family, my work, and my giving all prioritized in the hopes that if one gets out of skew, I can quickly course correct.
Hmm. And another thing that I think as I listen to you is that having a community around you is so critical too. Having friends that share similar beliefs and who will support you as you strive to keep your faith top of line, who are going to come along and encourage you in your role as a mom, who are going to cheer you on um, in your role as a professional, who are going to step in with you and help from a giving standpoint. I mean, I just have been thinking a lot about how critical the friendship piece is. Talk to me a little bit about building community. What are ways that you seek to build community and support around this life that you're creating?
Sure. Well, a very good example. Our team at the Oklahoma Pork Council is pretty young and female. And my colleague Ashton welcomed her baby girl earlier this year. And it's one thing to say, right, that you're going to prioritize your family in a very dynamic, very fun, very active team culture, but then in industry, right, that there's just a lot of stuff going on. And perhaps one of my proudest things looking back on this past year is what I've tried to do to support Ashton as she's grew her family and is momming, but then also working. And to your point of the community, I want the best for people, right, that surround me. And I think that what I've learned, where I have done well and where I've messed up, is a good example to others. And I want to share with others where I messed up just as much as where we got it right. And I think you can do that in community where you trust people, right? Where there is character, there's consistency, there's competency. And if you don't have that in your community, you don't have that foundation of trust, it's much harder to do. But I really work on building trust. And that's kind of just who I am. I think it's probably the agriculture mindset, the agriculture way of life. It's definitely my foundation, what I learned from my parents and my grandparents. Um, So I think of community based on trust, and I really want others to do well and exceed, and maybe learn from where I messed up, and because I will definitely mess up again, being that work in progress.
Well, and that vulnerability and transparency, willingness to just be authentic in who you are is really what makes you so special to me. I always enjoy our conversations. I always feel like they are never long enough, and I think that's always a great way. That's always a great way to have a conversation, I guess. When I look at you, I see innovative leader, awesome mom, dedicated friend, a supportive wife, positive role model, and a champion of others. There's just so many ways to describe you. When I talk to other people, they throw out some of those similar things. But I guess at the end of the day, how do you want people to remember you someday, and why?
Yeah, it's so hard. It's easier to ask that question. In fact, when we are interviewing young people, we often say, like, not what do you want to be, but who do you want to be? And that's a hard one to unpack. But I want to be all the things you just talked about. I want to be known for being creative, but being a friend. I want to be known for prioritizing my faith, my marriage, my family above my work. But I also want to kick butt at work, right? Like, I want to serve the Oklahoma pork industry well. I want to serve the national pork industry well. And I do anticipate staying in the industry for the balance of my career. But I hope that we continue to make amazing things happen for pig farmers. So all the things I guess you said, Jennifer, that's what I want to be, and that's what I am going to shoot for as we continue to try to do good in this world. And really proud, right, of the opportunity to work in pork. Really proud of our relationship and the fact that we've got to know each other. And I think we're all in this together, and we may as well have fun while we're doing it.
Absolutely. I agree. And I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. I know that you're really busy. This is always a hectic time of the year, but I just thought we need to have a bonus episode and have a little bit of fun. And when I thought who would be great for a Black Friday, I instantly thought of you. So I hope people are able to tune in and enjoy this episode. And you can join us for other podcasts as well. We've got the Pork Podcast featured on Farm Journal's YouTube channel, but it's also available anywhere that podcasts are found. I'm Jennifer Scheich, finding the story behind the story.